everybody. It is me, Suzanne Monk, your host of Trump Talk. This is Trump Talk Special Edition. We are talking tonight about Trump on China. Trump on China. This is what we're talking about. If you go to donaldjtrump.com, you will find in his position papers an excellent paper on his China trade reform policies. But we're going to go over the 4 points, some very interesting points I like to go over just because, of course, your friends are always talking about, your little never Trumper friends are always talking about how there are no specifics. Well, that's why we go over these things. Donald Trump has actually written a great deal of specifics, a lot of ideas, a lot of policies. They're unusual policies compared to the status quo that we have in Washington, but that doesn't mean they're not there or policies. That's why we talk about them. So we're going to talk about Chinese trade reform. The first point on Donald Trump's page about China trade reform is to bring China to the table by calling them out as a currency manipulator. One of the problems we've had here in the United States is that we've had presidents reticent to address the behavior of China in the currency markets and in currency manipulation. So Trump's plan is to, by stating that we can in fact go forward with a case under the World Trade Organization through the UN, begin to issue some complaints and eventually offer sanctions and other remedies against China for its trade manipulation. Just bringing them to the table, the negotiating table, by having that in our pocket saying, hey, look, China, you're manipulating your currency. We know you are. Don't make us take this any further. And that's a very important key of Mr. Trump's plan, is not to just go and sue China, but to call them out honestly for what they're doing wrong, which no president has been willing to do in quite some time. And that's how we got to the great trade imbalance and exploitation by the Chinese market as we see today. So let's move on to point 2, which is an important point. Enforce intellectual property laws. We are losing billions of dollars in intellectual property that is being stolen by China and reproduced. Electronic equipment, films, music, all sorts of things are being stolen by China and reproduced and sold as Chinese goods illegally. And the government has done nothing about it. Companies have been left to fend for themselves, to try to defend their intellectual property from China. They are failing to do so. Under a Trump plan, the intellectual property laws would be enforced with China. We would not have the current protections that we have, where the government actually steps in and prevents you from dealing with the government China, nor will it intercede for you or with you to prevent China from taking advantage of individual private property here of American citizens abroad, here or abroad. So that's number 2. Enforce intellectual property laws, very important. Number 3, and I think this is important to tell your Bernie friends, maybe your moderate friends, your independent friends, there's people, anyone who has a real compassionate kind of voter, this is an important factor. Donald Trump, third point, end Chinese sweatshops and revive U.S. manufacturing, as well as deal with the human rights and environmental violations of China. By calling out China as a human rights violator and as an environmental violator, we not only are able to help bring that manufacturing back here to America, where we can control our environmental regulations, where we can control our human rights and our job rights much better than we can in China, for crying out loud. But it's important that his plan is to call those things out in the world and to actually end business with Chinese sweatshops and Chinese businesses, China, where there are human rights violations and environmental violations. So that's a key point for all of your, soft, compassionates. In addition, he plans to end the export subsidies that China that are going to Chinese goods. There are also through export subsidies. There's a great deal of UN stuff. If you want to get in there and read at donaldjtrump.com, the position paper. Yeah, that's probably what we're going to have to deal with. Isn't that going to be interesting? We're going to have to deal. There's a question with Apple sweatshops in China. Certainly, this is what we're going to address. This is why people like Amazon, like John Bezos, has a whole mob of reporters trying to make sure to attack Trump, because they don't want an honest man who isn't actually interested in doing business, allowing China to manipulate our markets by using slave labor. That's what they complain about all the time on the left. They're using slave labor. Mr. Trump wants to stop that. It's in his plan, DonaldJTrump.com, positions. Let's look at number 4. Lower the tax rate, the business tax rate, to strengthen our position in the world against China. One of the reasons we can't just go to China and say, look, you're stealing our businesses, you're manipulating currency, you're stealing our intellectual property laws, and you're violating human rights. We're just going to take all those jobs back because we're not going to buy goods from you anymore. We're going to make them here in America, without making it easier to make stuff here in America. So a critical part of the plan is to lower the tax rate to strengthen the U.S. position globally so that businesses can indeed come back and start here. And I know he has talked about having a tax holiday for repatriating a good deal of funds that are still overseas. That would be a great way to start some of these, restart some of this manufacturing that we are bringing back. But there is going to, it's been a very interesting interaction we're going to have with China. You should read Trump's positions, because certainly there is a great deal of misinformation going out there. You can go to DonaldJTrump.com/positions, read his position on China reform. But just to review the 4 points we're looking at, he's going to bring China to the table by being honest and calling them out for the currency manipulation. He is going to enforce intellectual property laws and not allow China to steal intellectual property anymore without being addressed. He's going to end Chinese sweatshops by no longer purchasing goods, by no longer allowing China to just get away with human rights and environmental violations. We're calling those out. We're going to change our purchasing habits. Also, lower the tax rate to strengthen the position of American businesses so that they can come back, so that we can change our purchasing habits. So we're not beholden to nations like China who make cheap goods, but do it unethically. Excuse me. I'm allergic to China, and it's manipulating our economy, and it makes me sneeze. So you guys, go ahead and take a look. Thank you. Go out, DonaldJTrump.com. This has been Trump Talk Special Edition on China. We will do this every time I happen to miss a Trump Talk. You can catch Trump Talk regular edition every single day at random times. So if you're on Periscope, just follow me and it'll tell you when I'm on. And you can check it out. So thank you guys for me and Little Trumpy and the outgoing music. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. Vote Trump. Go Trump. If you're in Oregon, go out and vote tomorrow. Have a great night.